Before we get into this video, my friends at Headout are doing a great deal on tickets to the US Grand Prix. This year I was lucky enough to go to the Hungarian Grand Prix with tickets from Headout, and with the season coming to an end, opportunities to go to races are running out fast. Austin has consistently been one of the best races on the calendar to watch racing, and it's also a sprint weekend which, as someone who's been lucky enough this year to go to both a regular and also a sprint race, let me tell you that as a fan, you get way more out of your money during a sprint weekend. Simply follow the link in the description, enter my promo code ALDAS500, and with the Headout discount and my promo code, you will save over £800, or for my American friends over $1,000 on a 3-day ticket to the US Grand Prix. Be fast though, because once this offer is gone, it's gone. The deals don't end there, however, because throughout this video, I have also hidden 2 special coupon codes. If you're the first to redeem them, you will get a ticket completely for free. If you're just a little bit late for any of these offers, then you can still use ALDAS30 to get 30% off tickets to both the US and also the Mexican Grand Prix. And now let's get into the 5 drivers under pressure. Mercedes in general are under pressure because despite Red Bull sealing the championship with 6 races to go, the fight for second is far from over. Mercedes took the lead in the fight for best of the rest in Spain and haven't lost it since, but Ferrari is making serious gains. Since the summer break, the gap was 51 points after Spa, then going down to 40, 45, 24, and now just 20 after Japan. With that in mind, I think Russell going into the last part of the season is definitely under a bit of pressure. Whilst his teammate is 3rd in the championship and actually closed the gap to Checo in Japan, Russell is down in 8th. And what makes it even more worrying is that he's also now been passed by Lando Norris. And now, yes, the McLaren is perhaps the stronger car now, but the McLaren only became competitive from Austria onwards, whilst the Mercedes has been a top 5 car the entire season. Compared to Norris, Russell should have built up more of a points margin at the beginning of the season, so to see Lando overtake George now is pretty damning. Although Russell hasn't been a disaster, mistakes like Singapore just seem to have a bigger consequence. I mean, if we accept that Russell wouldn't have passed Lando, Mercedes still would have finished 3rd and 4th, and when you take into account that Leclerc would have dropped to 5th, it means in total that one mistake cost Mercedes 14 points against Ferrari. There's just something not quite clicking at Mercedes. The management in combination with George and Lewis, as we saw in Japan, just need to be more organised in terms of how they're going to work together to score the most points as a team until the end of the season. And Russell himself also needs to work on his own race execution. Whilst Russell has had a few bad races, Stroll has had a bad season. It might seem like it's too obvious to put Stroll on this list, but it doesn't make it any less valid. Aston Martin have fell away recently, of that there is no doubt. Apart from Alpine, they've probably been the second biggest victim of the McLaren resurgence, but whilst at the beginning of the season when Alonso had 6 podiums in the first 8 races, Lance should have been finishing in 4th, 5th or 6th place bagging those valuable points. Instead, this season Lance has only finished in the top 6 3 times. Recently, however, his qualifying pace has fell off a cliff. In the last 3 races he has qualified last and 17th, whilst Fernando has made it into Q3 every single time. Although Aston Martin in the development race have been overtaken, they were so good at the beginning of the year that it seems crazy that they could finish as low as 5th in the Constructors. McLaren has a 49-point gap to make up, but again, with how many races are left and with 2 drivers scoring points, I think at this point I'd put money on McLaren actually doing it than not. Alonso has scored points in all but 1 race this season, and even if we look at that 1 race in Singapore, he had damage from lap 2, so really Fernando has been just as good as he was at the beginning of the year, it's just that the cars fell away. Despite how secure Stroll is within the team, when this team finishes 5th in the Constructors' Championship, despite having the second best car for probably a third of the races this season. Yes, whilst the team will blame their lack of car development, the reality will be that with Alonso in 4th place in the Drivers' Championship, the team has no excuses and there is no mystery as to the root of their underperformance. I think Checo might be the most talked about driver in 2023, even in front of his history-making teammate. Although Checo has a contract for next year, Suzuka showed clear as day that he is still very much feeling the pressure. 7/10 off Max in qualifying, and then producing arguably his worst ever race outside of Singapore 2018, and all on a day when Red Bull secured their 6th Constructors' title, which probably makes that performance even more awkward. Despite trying to be, Red Bull are not the masters of subtlety when it comes to putting pressure on their own drivers. In 2019, Gasly was dropped just a week after Horner said he'd be kept on, and so the fact that Horner is now openly clarifying that Checo doesn't have a contract for 2025 and that Ricciardo is definitely in the running, the clock for Checo at Red Bull is running out. As far as what he can do this year, beating Lewis to 2nd and not dragging it out until the final race of the season is an absolute must. But to be honest, the pressure from himself, the team, the media, the fans, and everyone is not going to go away. Sargent as a rookie has been under pressure all year long, but there is no doubt that the arrival of Liam Lawson has ramped up the pressure even more over the past couple of races. When Logan got the upgraded Williams in Silverstone and had his best result of the season finishing in 11th, it felt like the start of the foundations for his strong end to the season, but the story since then has been about his mistakes and crashes. In the last 6 races, he spun late on in Hungary, had 2 crashes during the Dutch Grand Prix, including one that was his fault in qualifying. In Monza, he crashed into Bottas late on. In Singapore, he went into the barrier during the race. And then in Suzuka, he crashed out of qualifying and then also came back to finish the job on Bottas by crashing into him again during the race. These crashes are actually becoming more of a problem than it seems because, as head of vehicle performance Dave Robson revealed, since Zandvoort, Sargent hasn't been able to use the newest spec front wing that Albon has been using because the team isn't confident that they're going to have enough spares until the end of the season. And that is just the harsh reality of racing in a cost cap era. Williams is in a position where they're going to give Logan every single race until the end of the season to prove that he should be retained. There have been flashes of pace shown, like in Silverstone, Zandvoort, and even before he crashed in qualifying in Suzuka. But as James Vowles himself said after the crash, he just hasn't been able to string together a decent qualifying and race all season long. The team do want to keep him and they're trying to give him the space and support that he needs, but his performances are just making it harder and harder every single race, especially with someone like Liam Lawson on the sidelines. And now for this, I am totally cheating, and instead of having a driver, I'm gonna have the entire Alfa Romeo team. Now, to be brutally honest, I don't think people care enough about Alfa Romeo because whilst teams like Williams and McLaren got a lot of attention when they were struggling early on, Alfa Romeo have been having a terrible season, and yet no one is talking about it. If we compare Alfa Romeo to Haas, whilst Haas as an independent team with never the best budget on the grid has always been considered as the underdog, Alfa Romeo are supposed to be gearing up to become one of the biggest manufacturer teams on the grid in a couple of years' time. Despite this, they currently sit second to last in the Constructors' Championship, only ahead of AlphaTauri, who a few races ago had more drivers than points. And I just look at the team, and from top to bottom, I think everyone is underperforming. The team has great facilities, and yet not only is the car bad, but it hasn't improved over the course of the season. The drivers and team on the ground I also just don't think have capitalized enough on the weekends where there has been pace in the car. And looking at what Vowles has done at Williams and what Vasseur is starting to do at Ferrari, I think some questions have to be asked of Andreas Seidel as well. It's an odd situation that just as the old leaders of McLaren have left in Seidel and Key, McLaren under new leadership look better than ever. There was also a pretty damning quote from Zach Brown when asked by Will Buxton if he ever doubted himself when all of these changes were being made, with his response being in part that he'd wished he had done it 6 months sooner. Ouch. How much we can read from McLaren into Alfa Romeo is difficult. I think next year is the real test for this team because as the Alfa Romeo name will go away and the Audi DNA starts to be more and more present, Andreas Seidel leading the team and James Key heading the technical department have a lot to prove that they were not the people holding McLaren back and still might be the people who'll hold Sauber/Audi back in the future. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. And again, a big thank you to Headout. Don't forget to check out the link in the description to get massive discounts on tickets to the US Grand Prix and also the Mexican Grand Prix as well. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.